deal with airplane peanuts?
Hello, I'm James McCann. I'm just hanging out. I'm from Australia. I'm happy to be here.
He's from Australia.
When I tell you that James is one of the funniest people I've seen, it's true. He makes me laugh so f***ing hard every time.
Please.
Go watch James McCann's special.
James McCann, one of the most used guests in 2025.
Do you have McCann, too?
And McCann.
McCann's great.
Did he just text you about
No.
he's moving here?
Oh, yeah.
I think you're the funniest guy that's ever come out of Australia.
He is a very funny, very successful stand-up comedian, podcaster, and author. He just put out his 4th book of poems, Disquieting Levels of Egg. He's got a brand new special out September 1st on his YouTube page, and you can hear him every week on his amazing podcast, James Donald Forbes McCann, Catamaran Plan. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for James Donald Forbes McCann.
Austin resident, you know him from the Shane Gillis crew. This is James McCann, everybody.
With dozens of big-time podcast appearances under his belt and his latest special well over 1 million views, James McCann's status in the world of comedy has only continued to rise since moving from South Australia to Austin, Texas by way of Steubenville, Ohio in 2024. But odds are you may have never heard the name James Donald Forbes McCann without the work of Shane Gillis, who received a special shout-out at the end of Black Israelite, saying without whom my family would be living in a caravan.
What was his impact on that material specifically, or just your career as a whole to give him that special shout out?
Oh yeah, no, that was mostly material that I was doing opening for him. I'll say now, I came to this country with nothing. I got a job offer when I came over, and it very quickly fell apart. And then I was just super poor and without hope, and I wasn't in the comedy scene in America at all. I'd met Shane in Australia, and he took pity on me and my destitute state and my family. Yeah, he took me on the road, and he gave me a lot of dates, and I got to see so much of this country, and I'll be grateful to the day I die.
One place that he took you that I thought was really cool was Yellow Springs. You've actually recorded a podcast with Dave Chappelle. That was so cool.
I got to sit quietly in the corner with Dave Chappelle and ask about You've Got Mail.
You had some good lines in there. I felt like you guys were vibing. That was cool to listen to. How was your...
Put my pants.
Yeah. How was that experience? Was that super nerve-wracking? How was the experience just in Yellow Springs as a whole, and then also finding out that you were going to be on a podcast with him?
No, it's nuts. Getting to meet him, you just the whole time you're going, that is Dave Chappelle. That's Dave Chappelle. Then later on, he's a man. Yeah. He's a good man. And he's an extremely talented man, but he remains a human being, and he can be treated as such up to the initial shock of it being Dave Chappelle subsides. I mean, he's doing his club there, and they're having a great time. I think that's funny, this thing of Americans going, you get to a certain point, and you go, I'm out. I'm going away. That's what you want. You want to be so big that you turn into a city.
Yeah, literally. The selfless decision by Shane Gillis to recognize talent and prop up a funny comedian who in the grand scheme of things had nothing to offer him in return not only led to all of us comedy fans getting the treat of experiencing the stylings of best-selling poet James Donald Forbes McCann, but also blessed James with the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take advantage of the comedy scene in America at its highest levels alongside one of its biggest stars, at a time where the cultural interest in the art form has never been higher, which is not always the case for most people doing stand-up overseas. What is the comedy scene like in Australia?
Comedy scene in Australia is very festival-driven. So you got to have a new hour every year, and it's often themed. It doesn't have to be themed, but it's usually themed. And I was thinking that that's one nice positive about Australia is you all as a community, you're all doing your big hour in April, and so by May everybody sucks again, right? You have to get good again over the year, but everybody knows what it's like. I just did my hour, but here, because you're all dropping hours at different times. Right now, I'm trying to get the new material to fly, so I'm going out and I'm getting it ready for the road, and it'll get there. I don't want to talk it down. People need to get on those road dates, but it's I'm allowing myself to suck, and it'll be people go, man. Went out last night, people go, I love the special, man. You go, thank you so much. I have to go and bomb now. I have to go and choose to bomb now.
Yeah.
And so that was funny. But Australia is it's a very, I don't want to shit on it. There's beautiful people there. I would say the comedy infrastructure that's been making choices in Australia has been rotten for a long time. And there's a lot of talent, that they're happy to let wither on the vine. Whereas in America, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, but gee, there's a lot of people happy to make money. How nice. If you work hard in America and you achieve great things, people will try and profit off it. I mean, that's beautiful. That's genuinely a gift. And I wish the whole world was as open as that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Have you found it, talking about like the having to choose to go bomb again to strengthen new material, have you found that harder to do as your profile has kind of risen in the comedy world? More people know who you are and want to come see you specifically, and you're like, I have to bomb to make these jokes work?
It's a little like, just there'll be a couple of pops now when I come out. So I'm like, James McCann, and there'll be like a couple guys in the audience going, whoa, in a special word. And I do, in my heart, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, boys.
As someone who is not from the United States, but has got to see a lot of it now doing comedy, what stands out to you as a good comedy town?
I mean, there's 3. You're in Austin, or were you just in Austin?
I moved here about a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, this is emerged as sort of the third. I guess there was a time when Chicago was number 3, largely for improv in America. If you really make it, it doesn't matter if you're in a comedy town. Dave Chappelle can be out in Ohio somewhere, and Sam Towns up in Detroit, but you've got to have a lot of what makes for a good comedy town, just structurally, somewhere that has multiple showcase shows every night, as distinct from there's a headliner here and they're bringing their people. Somewhere that has a lineup show that has a bunch of different spots and everyone's doing 10, 15, 20 minutes. Good lineup show. Like, I think industry being somewhere is not as important. Like in Austin, there's a lot of podcasts, but there's not heaps of managers and agents running around here. You're unlikely to have a guy from Netflix drop in and watch you do a set, but there's like the alternate media is totally here in huge numbers. But I think that also helps some sense of like someone I could do well and someone could see me and that could be beneficial. You can be absolutely crushing it every single night in Pittsburgh, and like, who will give you a check? Who will say come to the next level? Other than the sweet people at the Pittsburgh Improv, who are great people and can have you back on the Pittsburgh Improv. Now they can maybe even then line you up with the greater improv network. But I think it does help to have big podcasts around. Yeah, to get to run a lot of new. I don't know. Maybe it can be done differently. This is very existential. This is no one has an answer. Certainly something's happening in Austin. I mean, how good is it that Cam Patterson has gotten snapped up? That's the mainstream going. At the same time, people are going like, this is an alternate reality. This doesn't make sense, this Austin thing. It's like, well, fuck, Cam just got SNL. I don't know how many New York comics got SNL this year, but I think it's just Cam.
As someone with their boots on the ground, it is interesting to see what people now refer to as the Rogan sphere in Austin, which, if you don't live online, is basically a term coined by people who don't like Joe Rogan for various reasons that they now use in order to quickly discredit entire groups of successful comedians that they also don't like all at once by simply just claiming they're part of this sphere instead of having to do the work to actually lay out their arguments with each comic individually. But to be honest, if you go see live comedy in Austin on any given normal night, it's way more of a Shane-verse or Philly sphere out here. From James McCann himself to guys like Matt McCusker, Joe DeRosa, Tommy Pope, Chris O'Connor, Sean Gardini, Tim Butterly, and of course the special young boys of PITM, not even to mention all the heavyset open micers influenced by his cadence and holding the mic with 2 hands. I know people online who have never visited Austin want to believe the Mothership is the only club in town and Joe Rogan signs off on every person allowed to do stand-up in Texas, but if you actually go watch live comedy here, the East Coast Philadelphia Shane Gillis effect is clear as day. However, the example set 30 years ago by Joe Rogan of putting your homies on instead of acting like a jealous nasty bitch all the time has thankfully rubbed off on today's biggest comic as well, not just with occasional spots on his massive podcast, but also putting money directly into his friends' pockets, from Bud Light commercials to lead roles on Netflix sitcoms, and even allegedly paying all of his openers 5 figures for every arena show.
Hey, I think we're doing some of those arenas with Shane in December.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm jumping on a few of those.
They're so fun.
It's so fun. It's just really like fun. Drinking, 20 minutes, decent paycheck, nice hotel, fun city.
Yeah, the round 2's crazy. I only ever did that with him.
It's crazy selling that many tickets.
Because
that's like 2 shows, kind of, right?
No, dude, it's crazy.
Yeah, true.
And it's easier than you think. I thought the round would be like this like nightmare to do, but I think it's easier than like when you do the straight up arena where you're on a humongous stage just facing people. That's tough.
The fact that Shane Gillis currently wields all these amazing opportunities for fellow comics, along with possessing one of the most powerful and rabid fan
bases on the entire internet, mixed with the fact that the mainstream media has already made it fair game to tee off on Joe Rogan and Tony Hinchcliffe, probably has a lot to do with why some comedians in LA and New York purposely choose to look past the reality of the Austin scene and pin all their frustrations on this Rogan-verse, but that's just my 2 cents. Guest spots from last week: Bernie Sanders was on The Tim Dillon Show, Zoran Mamdani went on Flagrant, Joe Rogan sat across from Brian Callen, Palmer Luckey, Marina Van Zeller, Andrew Schultz, Richard Lindzen and William Happer, and Trigonometry. Lemaire was on Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast, Oz Perlman came all over your mom's house, Funny Marco was on Bad Friends and went by Are You Garbage, Nick Murphy and Josh Francis took a trip to Stuff Island, the Wawa Twins visited Stavi's World and We Might Be Drunk, Ethan McKenzie be trippin', Francisco Ramos took a ride on the Heartland Highway, John Feidelberg and Mike Pavanelli stopped by Something's Burning, Scott Fillmore went on First Date, Kill Tony featured Fluffy and Sal Volcano, Sal also sat on the couch with Soder, Two Bears One Cave was Bert and Sebastian Maniscalco, Chuck Staten stopped by Sagday to Pod, Spit and Chicklets were on Son of a Boy Dad, Dolph Lundgren went on The Honeydew, Nick Novecki sat on The Way Back, Joe List stopped by Whiskey Ginger, Dax Flame was on Fat Fish, Senator Chris Murphy was on The Adam Friedland Show, Dr. Drew and Naeem Ali joined the Legion of Skanks, Todd Glass took his shoes off with Rick Glassman, Story Wars was a battle between Jeff Dye, Sarah Tolomash, and Naeem Ali, and Chris Stefano stopped by Jim Norton Can't Save You.
I'll never forget the halftime show was Bruno Mars, and they had given us this Super Bowl bag, and they had given us it was like a Super Bowl padded seat and little figurines or whatever, and then they'd given us this hat that had lights on it, and the whole point of it is you have to put on the hat, and it was going to be like a light show while Bruno Mars was singing, and my dad was like, I'm not putting on that hat, and he's just going on about he's not going to put on that hat, and then Bruno Mars comes out, he's like, who's this? This guy sucks. Like, that's just how my dad is. He doesn't know who he is at all. He was like, this is bullshit. And then little by little, as Bruno Mars, because he's so talented, I see my dad's foot start tapping little by little, and then I think he sang Gorilla, that song Gorilla, and then next thing you know, I see my dad has that hat on, lighting up, and he's like, who is this guy again? I'm like, Bruno Mars. And then my dad texted his wife, he was like, get me Bruno Mars on the iTouch.
That's funny. So your dad's humming Locked Out of Heaven.
Yes, he will be locked out because his son's a
This past weekend with Theo Von featured Aziz Ansari, Sam and Colby, and Stan the Chauffeur. Robbie Berger hit the links on No Bad Lies. Patton Oswalt did stuff with Howie Mandel. Durag and the Deer Tag had on Rob Stanton, Ben Stab. Tony Pepperoni stopped by Diaz Nuts. Matthew Mitchell was on Dad Meat. David Howe attended Camp Gagnon. PD Diabru was a beautiful boy. Karen Fian caught the Steph infection. Peyton Ruddy was on Only Fians. Michael Ridley had a rough week. Tristan Bowling stopped by Radio Ridley Radio. Ian Fidance and Catherine Blandford were the guests on Burtcast. Mika Fox and Tim McLean were on Being Ian with Jordan. Dan Soder broke bread with Tom Papa. Caleb Huron worked it out with Mike Birbiglia. Robert Ryan joined the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. Carlos Herrera went on Jet Fuel. Pete Angelo and Gio Perez were on Zach Amino's Morning Zoo. Harrison Greenbaum, Anthony DeVito, and Greg Stone stopped by You Know What Dude. Chris Scopo took a ride on the Dynamite Rocket Ship. Kevin Bridges was on Fitzdog Radio. Burbs Bros had on Shane Torres and Matt Lopes. Frank Caliendo was on Tiger Belly. Tuesdays with Stories, Chubby Behemoth, Solid Show, Panties in the Mouth, Boys Cast, The Regs, Cockfight, Friendly Fire, The Church, and History Hyenas all did not have guests. And we interviewed 3 Kill Tony Golden Ticket winners, Tristan Bowling, Jack Shaw, and JJ Alexander, right here on Joke World.
What's more nerve-wracking, going into Skanks or Kill Tony, as far as like just trying to, aggressive fan bases, trying to put on a good performance?
I really the thing is, God bless Tony and all the crew, but back in high school when I was playing Call of Duty on my Xbox, I was listening to Legion of Skanks.
Yeah.
So like there's been such a mysticism in my head. The reason why me and my girlfriend are dating is because when I'm on our first date, she looked at my phone, I was listening to Skanks on the way, and she's like, oh my god, you listen to Legion of Skanks? I love Legion of Skanks. And then she was a nightmare for the rest of my first date, and I'm just like, she likes Skanks. I've never met another girl who likes Legion of Skanks. So in a weird way, it's been like a common thread. So when I get asked to do Legion, I'm just like, holy shit. I'm like, I really have to do good, or else I'm gonna look like a fucking asshole. And luckily, they've liked me so far, and that just makes me feel so happy.
That's awesome. As far as new stand-up comedy specials that are either out right now or coming out soon, Matt McCusker, A Humble Offering, Michelle Wolf, The Well, and Mo Amir, Wild World are all out on Netflix. Frankie Quinones, Damn That's Crazy is out on Hulu, and Ryan Sickler, Live and Alive came out on YouTube. There's also a few projects in the works right now that will be coming out soon. Starting on November 2nd with Louis J. Gomez, You're Making This Worse on YouTube. On November 4th, Leanne Morgan Unspeakable Things comes out on Netflix. And November 21st, Sebastian Maniscalco It Ain't Right debuts on Hulu. And not technically stand-up specials, but Josh Johnson, Adam Ray, and Big J Okerson all have new stand-up comedy posted on their YouTube channels right now. And there's a new episode of Roast Battle League that was filmed at the Comedy Store. And last but not least, if you enjoyed today's video and want to watch our full conversation with James McCann, that can be found on patreon.com/jokeworld, along with all of our other long-form conversations with comedians we've interviewed on this channel. But if this was the perfect amount of comedy news for you and you don't want to hear a single drop more, then obviously do not join our Patreon. That would be a silly investment from a silly man like yourself. All right, that's about it. See you next time with some more comedy news.
At Joke World. That's it, at Joke World.
And the world is WRLD.
That's a great YouTube channel, Joke World. Check it out.